Hey all, Ron Armstrong, filmmaker extraordinaire, and today I want to talk to you about how to pitch your movie idea to a film studio. Now this is easier said than done. I want to go over the process of getting in the door and then how you actually do the pitch. I'm going to use two case studies, one where I did the pitch to Disney and the other one where I did the pitch to Universal Pictures. Now the idea here is some people say, do the best work you can, come out with your product, whether it be a script, a short film, or a feature, and the studios will find you. And that's not necessarily true, because as you see online, that the market is saturated with product. The digital age, the digital revolution has changed things so much to where, filmmakers can compete with Hollywood doing the kind of like effects that you see in Star Wars and other films. So it's up the ante. So what you need to do is make sure that you're aggressively out there campaigning and getting your name out there so that the studios know who you are. The first way you can do this is by going on IMDb Pro or IMDb and looking up studios, film studios that have a history of producing products that are similar to the film that you've done or are thinking to do. So for example, if you're looking to produce your own version of Star Wars or the Avengers or whatever, you've got to make sure that you're approaching the right studio. Don't approach one that has a history of doing like comedies or romantic comedies or dramas, because that's not going to work. You know what I mean? I remember one time I actually, I ran into Ron Howard, and him and I talked for a while, and I pitched an idea to him, and he was really cool, but he was saying that that's not the type of products or film that he produces. So, he recommended I go in a different direction in terms of who should I approach with the idea. So make sure that first of all, that the production company that you're going to approach or pitch to, is basically in line with the type of genre and film that you're looking to come out with. The other thing is too, once you identify those, you have to look at the development executives, who in the development department that you can approach and speak to. You want to make a list of those names and then start sending out like a kind of a query letter, basically a letter saying what your story is about, whether it be, again, script, feature film, short film, and asking them if they would be interested. And you're going to be mailing this out. You need to do it in mass. So make a list of 100 production companies and send out your query letter or whatever, and to see if you gauge if you can get their interest, And if they're interested, they will contact you. But a lot of times you're going to get rejection letters because they're going to say, we don't accept unsolicited material, At that point, you have another option, which is you can either get your agent to submit your idea, or you can contract an entertainment attorney who can work as your agent and write the introductory letter to the studio, introducing you as a filmmaker or screenwriter and asking if they would review your material for possible development. Entertainment attorney is going to cost you some money, and if you're looking to play the numbers, meaning you really need to send out a lot of query letters, it's going to cost you some money, versus if you have an agent will probably, a good agent will get you in the door. So that's how you want to start out approaching this and getting in there. And there are a lot of different avenues of opportunity. You don't always have to approach the development executives, I mean, one of the things I did was I read the trades a lot, and I found that one producer in particular of a small studio had just got financed by this bank to do about 3 or 4 pictures. And I sent her basically a letter congratulating her on getting this large sum of money to finance her multi-picture deal. And to my surprise, she called me 2 weeks later on the phone. I was just shocked. And she wanted me to pitch her the idea I had spoke about. So that's one of the things you can do, is basically know the industry, see what deals have been made or being made, and then follow up on those rather quickly. Now, going to the pitch itself, like I said, I was going to mention 2 case studies, which was Disney and Universal Pictures. My first pitch was to Disney, and it was great. I love working with Mickey. Mickey's an awesome guy. He loves the cheese, so bring cheese. But when I went to Disney, the building was magnificent. I mean, if you get a chance to go to the studio lot or just go there in their offices, you'll see that Disney has money, you know. And the receptionist there, she treated me really well. How I got that meeting was through another president of a film studio who wanted to do like a type of a co-production with Disney, something of that nature. So he was able to arrange the meeting. And the receptionist there immediately asked me if I wanted milk and cookies. And I was like, are you kidding me? Milk and cookies? Sure, bring it to me. And you know, I'm a vegan, so I'm not going to eat the milk and drink the milk or eat the cookies. And I just wanted to see if that was a joke or not. And she actually brought out milk and cookies. And I was just like so amazed. I'm like, wow, I'm really in Disney, you know? So anyway, it was very scary because when we sat in the pitch session, it was just, you know, this really nice room, and it was all the development executives were there. And the first thing they said was, well, you know, Ron, we've seen your other work and we loved it, so let's hear your pitch. And luckily, the guy who actually set the pitch up, the head of the studio, said, you know what, don't worry, let me do the talking. And he did a wonderful pitch session. He talked about how we wanted to what we wanted to bring to the screen, the direction we wanted to take with the feature film and everything. And they loved the pitch. They were excited. And what impressed me the most is they did their homework. They looked me up. They studied the type of films I did. And they were on board. They were very happy with the pitch, the film, the direction. And let me just take a little, make a little side note on this, is that even well-established directors who are going for major films, like if you're an established director and you want to direct the next Fast and Furious, or you want to direct the next James Bond, you've got to pitch it. You got to pitch your vision of what you want to bring to the table, because they want to know, like, what are you going to do with this franchise? What are you going to do with this series? Or what are you going to do with this film? We want to know the direction you're going to take. Is it going to be too dark, because or is it going to be, very, very bright and glittery and pop culture like, to where we can sell toys and do a lot of merch? So you have to think about, what is your idea and your vision. And the way, let me get into the details of the pitching sessions so you understand how you need to pitch, because it's very important that you're passionate. And there's a term that we use, it's called status transferable. So if you're very excited about your project, other people will see that, and they'll feel that energy, that vibration of how excited you are, and they'll become excited. If you're lukewarm about your project, they're not going to buy into it. It's all about you. So from the very beginning, whether again it's your script, short film, feature film, or just an idea, you have got to be seriously passionate about it, because it's going to take 3 years to bring to the screen. There's a lot of work involved, and no one's going to be on board for that amount of arduous tasks that has to be done on a prolonged time without the person who's spearheading it being passionate about it. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? So anyway, some of the things that you need to know, and I think that would help you in your pitch, whether it's to investors or to a studio, these are universal principles that I've used. Your film, when you go in doing your pitch, should always have a tagline. You know what I mean? And I always like to start out my pitches by asking a question. And I think that's great. I remember back when I was a kid, the original Superman came out with Christopher Reeve, right? And it was like, one of the things they had as a tagline is, "You'll believe a man can fly." And I love that. It said so much. And if you can take that and flip that for a pitch session, and the way I envisioned that pitch going, I don't know how it went, but I can see them saying, "What if a man could fly?" And that is so intriguing. It gets your attention. So whatever your story is, if you come up with some really great tagline, but phrase it as a question to get them thinking, I think you grip them and you pull them in right away. So that's just an example there. Another thing you want to do is, when you start out, is you want to compare your film to very successful films. You can say, my film is like Legally Blonde meets Animal House. So they get an idea of where you're coming from. My film is like The Thing meets Aliens, but don't ever compare yourself to a flop, because that's not going to work, because right away you'll kill your chances of getting kind of greenlit, if you know what I mean. So you want to do that. You want to make that comparison, because it immediately gives them an idea of the successful film that you're similar to. And Hollywood works basically. They build upon successes. They don't want. They're very and they're against risk. You know, they don't want to take too much of a risk. They want to like surf along the tried and true methods. So the more you can associate your idea and your concept with something that is successful, that's out there in the market or has been successful, the better your chances are. You know, and sometimes, you know, that comparing your film to two other successful films, there has been a history in Hollywood of films being greenlit just based on those things, based on a tagline, based on the two ideas that that you've had about what movies are similar. Films have been sold on that, you know, so don't downplay or think or underestimate the power of that type of a pitch, you know what I mean? So, what I like to do too when I talk about, then you need to go into the synopsis of what your story is about. I like to start from the top down. I don't want to get into the weeds or the details right away. I want to start at the high level to give them a big picture overview of what this film is about, then get into the weeds. And there's a really good method to this, method to this madness, or reason for doing this, and I'll explain that. You've got to do what I call calibration. That means you got to look at their reaction and see if they're buying into it. Because if they're not, then you've got to slowly step back away and let them know that you're kind of amendable to changes, but you're not going to give up your vision. You know what I mean? And the way to do that is start with the grand or big picture, then work your way down and calibrate and see their reaction. You know, you may say like, you know, my film has this magnificent character. He's a guy who the world is against. And you know, if you look at their reaction and you know, you may get one of the development executives saying, a guy, could it be a woman? And that's when you're going to have to start doing what I call is the calibrating and saying, yeah, it could be a woman. You know, the world is against her. You know, I mean, only do that if you feel that it's in line with your vision. Don't change anything just because you want to get a deal, you know, but be open to working with them, you know. So again, you got to look at them, engage them, you know. This is why I don't want to inundate them with the details right away, because they'll get caught up in the details and they'll miss the bigger picture. And the idea is I want to sell them on the concept, the idea, and we can work out the details later once it's greenlit. That's what you want to do, all right? The other thing is I'd like to leave the synopsis on a high note and leave them wanting more. You know what I mean? I don't want to give them everything. I want to just like give them like the meat and potatoes and then leave them with a cliffhanger, you know? And I'll say, and the character is that the world is against her and no one understands her, but she is fighting for her life. And at the very time that she thinks that she's getting the money to support her and her kids, something happens. And leave it at that. And they're going to be asking questions. They're going to be saying, you know, what happens? What happens? What happens? And that's when you know you kind of got them. And you can go into more detail if you want, but just give them these little golden nuggets. And sometimes you can let them fill in the blanks, because, you know, if your story is really good, it'll lead them on a journey and they'll start seeing where you're going, you know. So let me go on more. Okay, so we talked about the calibration. All right, so if you've done a really good job in your pitch session, everybody's gonna be excited, they're gonna be loving it. The one thing that you have to be very careful of is, even if they don't like your idea, they may still compliment you and it may still sound like everything went great, because they may not be open and honest with you. And there's always gonna be one person there that's going to be can be very cynical or very quiet, and you don't know where that person is, what side of the fence they're on. But that's okay. You're gonna have to deal with that. Typically, once the pitch session is over, they start running numbers. You know, and I mean, that's really what it's all about. It's like, can your movie sell seats at the box office? That's the bottom line. I know you're passionate about the concept. You may think from a very subjective perspective that people should love it. It'll be a hit. But the studio understands that really what it boils down to is, who is the film targeting? Who is the audience? And that's when they take it to their accounting department, they run the numbers. They'll look at the demographics. You know, who is the film appealing to? Is it young white males from 18 to 25? Is it young white females from 18 to 21? You know, like, is it geared toward the African American audience, the middle-aged white male audience? Who is the film geared to? And they run those type of numbers to see what the budget will be, and then what the return can be. And Hollywood has a very sophisticated accounting system, and this is something that you won't ever understand. They're not going to make that privy to you in terms of the algorithm, how they do the calculations and all that. And based on those numbers, when they run those numbers, if they come back that they see that this film could make money, then they'll want to talk to you further. It doesn't mean necessarily that your film is now, it's going to go to theaters. It just means that it's going to go in now, it's greenlit to go into development. And there's all kinds of stories of development hell. You know, I mean, they could take your film, pay you for it, not have you direct it. They could take your film, have you direct it, but have very limited creative control. You know, they could take your film, have you direct it, then shelve it, and you'll never see it in the theaters. So there's a long way between actually you going from development to the silver screen. So keep that in mind. It's not all great when you get that phone call and they say, hey, we want to do business with you. You know what I mean? We want to be in a Ron Armstrong picture making business, you know? Just like, the way I look at it in my career, the way I've always seen, it's like conquering a step at a time. There's these little milestones that you have to get to. And each milestone you celebrate with a success, you know. The first milestone is they call you and they like your idea and they want to talk more. The second milestone is when you have the meetings with development and you see if you're going to, if they're going to adhere to your creative vision, because that's when the changes come and you realize this is not the picture I originally pitched to you. You're changing it dramatically. And then they'll throw more money at you and say, well, yeah, we're changing it, but here's more money, so be quiet, you know? So you have to think about that, you know? So there's all these milestones and hoops that you have to jump through before it gets to the screen. And hopefully, if it gets to the screen, it's still the type of film that you originally pitched and you envisioned. But again, also, don't be afraid to make concessions, because sometimes the studios, they have a long history of knowing what works and what doesn't work. And also, they have a long history of being just totally clueless. So you got to work with them, but just be cautious. And the way to do that is have a good attorney, a good agent that will campaign for you and work with you to bring your original vision to the screen, you know. And think about it as a filmmaker or a screenwriter, what differentiates you from everybody else? What is your signature? What makes you great? I mean, if you look at J.J. Abrams, he does a lot of lens flare, and he's really good at taking a product and revamping it and making it more contemporary, like he did with Star Trek and like what he did with Star Wars. So you want to think, well, what is your forte? What are you good at? If you look at John Carpenter, who I love as a director, the guy was really good at creating like this post-apocalyptic world or these great horror stories or great horror movies. So think about, you know, what's your forte, what's your genre, what makes you special, what type of shooting camera angles that you bring to the table, because inevitably, they're going to want to know, like, you know, as a filmmaker, what is going to be your signature mark on the film? How are you going to, you know, bring a film to the screen where people, they don't see the credits and know it's your film right off the bat? Just by viewing the visuals, they'll know that, hey, this is a Ron Armstrong film. This is, you know, a Mary Johnson film. They can see it. If you look at Sam Raimi's film from when he started with The Evil Dead to Spider-Man, you can tell within the shots, within the scenes, that they're distinct signatures of his style. Even with Spike Lee, there's a shot where in Malcolm X you see Denzel Washington sitting on like a dolly and being pulled, and that's kind of like Spike Lee's signature shot, you know. Not that you have to have a signature shot, but there has to be something very unique about your vision and what you're trying to tell. So, you know, that's basically it for pitching to the studios. I mean, there's a lot more details that I could add to that and tricks to it, but I think this gives you an overview of, you know, some of the key points, the key bullet points you want to keep in mind. You know, right now I'm fortunate to work with Disney on the Cars 3 promotion, and that's kind of like awesome. You know, I'm really looking forward to that. I did work last year on a promotion, and it was a tough one. In fact, it was like I was working with a bunch of kids, and the kids were very demanding, and I was just like, all right, but they were cute kids, you know. This one kid was asking for cappuccino. I said, listen kid, you're too young, you're only 6, you can't drink cappuccino. He was like, bring me my cappuccino. I was like, whoa, you know, I'm just kidding. But actually I got stressed out so much that I ended up in a hospital, you know, and I was like, Jesus, it was like a lot of pressure. And the reason why I'm telling you that, because people make it seem like, you know, if you're working with the studio, if you're working with these guys, it's all gravy, but it's not, you know. I've gotten financed by a studio and worked with them, and that's when the pressure hits you. It's so much. I mean, there was one point I remember I was sitting in my apartment and I'm getting all these calls on a daily basis, and they're asking me questions, wanting me to know what's the status, what, you know, trying to arrange for trailers to get to the lot and things. And it's just so complex and so overwhelming. And I was just like, whoa. And then you're sitting there and you're wondering if the crew respects you, if the people respect you, and then they're asking you how many pages did you shoot for the day, and then you realize you're like, this is something else. But I mean, you know, it can be enjoyable because it's your vision that you're bringing to the screen, and you're part of the fortunate few who've gotten to the opportunity to be there. But it's also a very stressful time in your life, and you got to know how to handle it. So that's how you pitch your film idea to a studio. I hope this was helpful to you. This is Ron Armstrong, filmmaker extraordinaire. And if you want to know more or you know, like have any questions, you know, please sign up to my newsletter on the link below. It'll give you more details about pitching and all kinds of really cool stuff. So again, Ron Armstrong, filmmaker extraordinaire. That's all for now.